It's been 5 years since president. A lot has happened since then, not least of which was his political comeback and triumphant return to the White House. On Friday, hours after he touched down from his whirlwind trip to Asia, Mr. Trump agreed to sit down with us for a wide-ranging conversation. It was exactly 1 year to the day since he sued Paramount, the parent company of CBS, alleging that 60 Minutes had deceptively edited an interview with his opponent, Kamala Harris. Paramount settled that lawsuit. The settlement did not include an apology or admission of wrongdoing. In our nearly 90-minute conversation this past week, we spoke with Mr. Trump about the country and the world. The story will continue in a moment. That we met with the president at Mar-a-Lago, his private club in Florida, on the 31st day of the government shutdown. We are now approaching the longest shutdown in American history. Democrats' fault. Under your presidency, we're talking about more than 1 million federal workers who are not getting a paycheck, including our air traffic controllers. You see, there's traffic snarls out at the airports. Now, this weekend, food aid for more than 42 million Americans is set to expire. What are you doing as president to end the shutdown? All we're doing is we keep voting. I mean, the Republicans are voting almost unanimously to end it, and the Democrats keep voting against ending it. You know, they've never had this. This has happened like 18 times before. The Democrats always voted for an extension. All we're saying, give us an extension, well, work it out. They've lost their way. They become crazed lunatic. And all they have to do, Nora, is say, let's vote. So Senate Democrats say they will vote to reopen the government if Republicans agree to extend subsidies for over 20 million Americans who use Obamacare for their health insurance. Obamacare is terrible. It's bad health care at far too high a price. We should fix that. We should fix it. And we can fix it with the Democrat. All they have to do is let the country open and we'll fix it. They have to let the country open and I'll sit down with the Democrats and we'll fix it. But they have to let the country, and you know what they have to do. All they have to do is raise 5 hands. We don't need all of them. But so you're saying your plan is to tell the Democrats to vote to end the shutdown, correct? Very simple. And that you will put forward a health care plan. No, we will work on fixing the bad health care that we have right now. Now, we have terrible health care at too expensive for the people, not for the government, for the people. But Mr. President, with all due respect, you've been talking about fixing the health care since the Democrats, but since 2015, you've said you'd fix that. I've been talking about it for a long time. We almost did it. We were 1 vote short. We would have had great health care. That was in 2017 when Senate Republicans failed by 1 vote to partially repeal Obamacare. We can make it much less expensive for people and give them much better health care. And I'd be willing to work with the Democrats on it. The problem is they want to give money to prisoners, to drug dealers, to all these millions of people that were allowed to come in with an open border from Biden, and nobody can do that. Not one Republican would ever do that. My understanding is if those health care subsidies are not extended, premiums will double for many of the people that are on it. And I was looking into it. 3/4 of these people will see their healthcare premiums double. Live in states where you won in the last election. I mean, even here in Florida has the highest number of residents on Obamacare in the country. And I'm saying we can fix it. Nora, you have helped end these government shutdowns in the past when they came about. And you did it by bringing very good at it. Going to do it by not going to do it by extortion. Not going to do it by being extorted by the Democrats who have lost their way. There's something wrong with these people. So then what happens on November 18th, when the troops don't get a pay? Schumer is a basket case and he has nothing to lose. He's become I just left Japan. He's become a kamikaze pilot. Sounds like it's not going to get solved. The shutdown, it's going to get solved. Yeah. Oh, it's going to get solved. How? Well, get it solved eventually. They're going to have to vote. You're saying the Democrats will capitulate. I think they have to. And if they don't vote, that's their problem. Now, I happen to agree to something else. I think we should do the nuclear option. This is a totally different nuclear, by the way. It's called ending the filibuster. But to do that, Head needs Senate Majority Leader John Thune to change Senate rules. Did you see John Thune said today? They're not. John doesn't. Well, John and a few other, but you know what? The Republicans have to get tougher. If we end the filibuster, we can do exactly what we want. We're not going to lose power. The theory is, oh, then well do it. But then when they get into power someday, they'll do it. That's true. But you know what? So, you think we're here right now? No, I like John Th. I think he's terrific, but I disagree with him on this point that he said today he wasn't going to do it. Well, that's too bad. So far, the shutdown hasn't spooked the stock market, which hit record highs this past week. Perfect timing for your show. Just hit an all-time high. We're doing really well. Can I ask you, Mr. President, on that point, though? When the stock market is doing well, that doesn't affect everybody. Not everybody's invested in the stock market, but there have been grocery prices, 401ks, people of 401ks. Their 401ks are double what they were a year ago, but for people that don't have 401ks or are not invested in the stock market, they've seen their grocery prices go up. Inflation, no, you're wrong. They went up under Biden. Right now, they're going down. Other than beef, which we're working on, which we can sell very quickly. On the economy, the signature part of your economic plan is tariffs. The Supreme Court is going to hear arguments this week on whether you have the authority to impose these sweeping tariffs without congressional approval. The lower courts have ruled against you. That's why it's in the Supreme Court right now. Very close rulings. Yeah, what happens to your economic plan if the Supreme Court invalidates your tariffs? I think our country will be immeasurably hurt. I think our economy will go to hell. Look, because of tariffs, we have the highest stock market we've ever had. Because of tariffs, 401ks at the highest level that, and this is millions and millions of people that we've ever had. 401ks, I think it's the most important subject discussed by the Supreme Court in 100 years that I know your time is limited, so I do want to make sure I get through more of these topics. Immigration. You campaigned on immigration. You largely won the election on a promise to close the border, and you succeeded on that. Illegal crossings at the southern border are at a 55-year low. More recently, Americans have been watching videos of ICE tackling a young mother, tear gas being used in a Chicago residential neighborhood, and the smashing of car windows. Have some of these raids gone too far? No, I think they haven't gone far enough because we've been held back by the judges, by the liberal judges that were put in by Biden and by Obama. You're okay with those tactics? Yeah, because you have to get the people out. You know, you have to look at the people. Many of them are murderers. Many of them are people that were thrown out of their countries because they were, criminals. Well, you promised in your campaign that you were going to deport the worst of the worst, violent criminals, rapists. Well, that's what we're doing. A lot of the people that your administration has arrested and deported aren't violent criminals. Landscapers, nannies, construction workers, landscapers who are criminals. No, look, the family of you landscapers, and I need farmers more than anybody. Okay, did I ask it your intent to deport people who do not have a criminal record? We have to start off with a policy, and the policy has to be you came into the country illegally, you're going to go out. However, you've also seen you're going to go out, we're going to work with you, and you're going to come back into our country legally. When will you declare mission accomplished on immigration? Well, it takes a long time because, probably I say 25 million people were let into our country. A lot of people say it was 10 million people. But whether it was 10 or I believe I'm much closer to the right number. Of the 25, many of them should not be here. But we're cleaning up our cities. I campaigned on crime, but I've done a much better job on crime than I thought. The crime numbers are way down, even though we have a lot more people in our country that really shouldn't be here, and many of them are stone cold, hard criminals. The president has ordered the National Guard to 5 cities: Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., Portland, Chicago, and Memphis. This past Tuesday, while speaking to American troops in Japan, you talked about U.S. cities. They're having trouble with crime. And you said, if we need more than the National Guard, well, send more than the National Guard. What does that mean, send more than the National Guard? Well, if you had to send in the Army or if you had to send in the Marines, I'd do that in a heartbeat. You have a thing called the Insurrection Act. You know that. Do you know that I could use that immediately and no judge can even challenge you on that? But I haven't chosen to do it because I haven't felt we need it. So, you're going to send the military into American cities. Well, if I wanted to, I could. If I wanted to use the Insurrection Act, the Insurrection Act has been used routinely by presidents, and if I needed it, that would mean I could bring in the Army, the Marines. I could bring in whoever I want, but I haven't chosen to use it. I hope you give me credit for that. I want to ask you about another matter. James Comey, John Bolton, Letitia James were all recently indicted. There's a pattern.